As a business-to-business marketer, your needs are unique. B2B buying cycles are long, and your customers face incredibly complex decisions. Isn't it time you had a marketing platform built specifically for you? LinkedIn ads empower marketers with solutions for you and your customers. LinkedIn ads allow you to build the right relationships, drive results, and reach your customers in a respectful environment. On LinkedIn, you'll have direct access to and build relationships with decision makers. Of the 875 million users on the network, 180 million are senior-level executives, 10 million are C-level executives. You will also be able to drive results with targeting and measurement tools built specifically for B2B. And they work. Audiences exposed to brand messages on LinkedIn are 6 times more likely to convert. LinkedIn ads also ranked #1 for security, community, and ad experience as part of Business Insider's Digital Trust study. Here at Sway Group, LinkedIn is a pivotal part of our day-to-day and is just absolutely vital for building relationships with clients and with our employees. Make B2B marketing everything it can be and get a $100 credit on your next campaign. Go to linkedin.com/MPN to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/MPN. Terms and conditions apply.
Hey there, it's Jason with the Marketing Podcast Network. Real quick, I want to make sure you know that the world's leading B2B Marketing Expo is returning to the Los Angeles Convention Center on March 21st and 22nd. It's high time we got back together to learn, see the latest technologies and solutions, and network, right? Join thousands of marketing professionals just like you to learn from over 250 industry expert speakers, educational masterclasses, and over 300 exhibitors. And this year, your ticket also gets you into the Sales Innovation Expo and the Marketing and Advertising Expo. So it's like 3 conferences in one. It's March 21st and 22nd at the Los Angeles Convention Center. Go to b2bmarketingexpo.us to register. That's b2bmarketingexpo.us. The Marketing Podcast Network is a proud partner of the B2B Marketing Expo for 2023. We'll see you in LA.
Welcome to The Art of Sway. This is a podcast that brings you inside the world of marketing through the lens of influence. I'm your host, Danielle Wiley. Each week, through candid conversations with industry insiders, we will uncover how influencer marketing is making an impact across all consumer buying habits and is changing the way we talk to each other. Let's dive in. I was thrilled to get the chance to talk to Stephanie Ramirez from Lyft. We had some great dialogue about the challenges of being a social media manager, especially within the context of appealing to diverse and varied audiences. It was also really interesting to get Stephanie's take on which metrics are most impactful when it comes to analyzing the success of any social media initiative. Enjoy. As a data-driven social media strategist, Stephanie Ramirez has more than 12 years of experience. She worked on and led teams across different brands such as Procter & Gamble, Univision, Meta, Cheddar, SoulCycle, Nespresso, Time Inc.'s People on Espanol, and now Lyft. She currently helps lead social media strategy at Lyft, heading up its social data analytics and insights for the rideshare business. At Lyft, Stephanie played the key role of launching the brand's TikTok channel to quickly grow to more than 120,000 followers in under a year. She also helped lead the partnership with Oscar Mayer #WienerMobileLyft campaign that was nominated for a 2022 Webby and Sabre Award. At Univision, she led the social launch and growth of over-the-top network, Flamma, Univision's first original digital programming, and helped lead social for its first multi-channel network, UCN, the #1 leading Hispanic-focused MCN in the U.S. She has been recognized as a 2017 Forbes 30 Under 30 in Media nominee and also won the Tekla Award for Best Facebook Page at Hispanicize 2016 and Best Brand Doing Latino Social Media at Hispanicize 2015. Stephanie is a popular keynote speaker at conferences, panels, and universities, including her alma mater, the University of Florida. Hi, Stephanie. It's so great to meet you and have you on.
Thank you so much for having me. Great to meet you as well.
Yeah, I was so excited when our mutual, I can't call her colleague, but Brianna Jacobs, who runs an amazing conference, offered to make the introduction. And I was so excited to get the chance to talk to you. So thank you so much.
Yeah, no, great here. I'm so glad she made the connection.
Yeah. So I wanted to just kind of start by letting people know who you are and what you do and kind of your journey to where you are today. Because I know you've been at Univision, you've been at Lyft for quite a while and have made a pretty big impact there. So maybe just talk us through a little bit how you got to where you are today and where that is.
No, definitely. So currently working with Lyft right now, and I am their data analyst point of person, I would say, just because I work on the organic social media team and they never really had a dedicated data analyst till now. And I kind of carved out that role for myself. But yes, so I sit under the brand marketing bucket and the organic social media team. And so we're comprised of creatives, strategists, and I initially started out as a strategist on the team, but as our team has pivoted towards kind of being much more insights and data driven, we decided, kind of having that point person be me because I've had that strong interest and background in data. And so I do the day-to-day, monthly, weekly reporting, quarterly reporting for the entire team. So I go through all the content performance, channel performance, and I help bring that data and insights to the creative team as we're executing our content so we can further brainstorm and create further content and analyze how our content's doing, if it's working or not.
Very cool.
Yeah, I've been there for a few years now. I kind of started with them during the pandemic, so it was a very interesting time.
Yeah.
But no, it was really great to kind of get us out from that spot into like a really great point right now. So I think just overall, my experience has been so wonderful. I've learned so much in the position, especially focusing so much more on data. But yeah, so like you mentioned too, before Lyft, I had worked on my own consulting as well, just kind of building up my own brand. And prior to that, though, I had such a great experience at Univision. So working on, again, social media, I've kind of done social media my entire career. So built out I want to say it's their US Hispanic digital platform called Flama. So it was like a startup within a big corporation. And that was probably my most rewarding career experience, kind of building platforms from nothing. Because usually in social, you kind of inherit the channels when you go into different positions. Mm-hmm. But to build a brand from scratch and having to introduce a brand new brand that no one really knew about and creating the content from scratch and building the influencers from nobody to kind of just big followings. And so that was kind of a really great experience there. And then prior to that, I had media experiences and then also just starting out an agency right after college. So in New York for 11 years, but have kind of bounced around in different industries, but always on the social media teams.
Got it. So before you had your current role at Lyft, I know that kind of your claim to fame there was building, I'm going to get the number wrong, so you're going to have to say, but you built up the TikTok, you were the social media manager, I guess, and you built up the TikTok following to how much?
Yeah, it's over 120,000 now. So it's growing. Like, it's our best performing platform to date. Like, it's just always in the green. Just growing and growing.
That's so good. I know that there's just been so much buzz lately and for everyone in the media with who I follow on Twitter and kind of the influencer media that I keep tabs on. There's just been a lot of buzz lately about social media managers from a few different angles. Like one, just how hard it is and like the endless work involved in it and just this constant drive to have to be creating new content, kind of feeding the beast. And I mean, you lived it firsthand and had great success with it, but maybe talk a little bit about the ups and downs and what it's like to be on the front lines like that from a social media perspective.
Yeah, I think from the beginning too, it was, I want to say around 2009, 2008, like when Facebook and Twitter started coming out for brands and using it as like more of a marketing tool. It was kind of this cool new niche that like all the young kids are about. And obviously till now, everybody is kind of just grasping social media. But I think as it's evolved, it's viewed as though like with not enough respect as I feel like it should, because people think it comes so easy. Or if I have an Instagram account, I know how to run this, but there's so much strategy, insights, and experience that comes with it, especially as a brand, that I think most folks don't kind of see from the surface level. So it is very exhausting too, because you always have to be online. Like it's not a job that you can kind of just like check out from 9 to 5 and you're done. It's constantly being online, constantly being on the pulse of trends, and things happen so fast, but they also die really fast on social. Like a trend can last for like a couple days and then there's a new one and that one's old news now. So it's like, it's exhausting in that sense, but it's also like invigorating and challenging too, because you always try to figure out like, how can we create a new strategy for this new platform, this new audience? And it's also nice to see how throughout the years, like human behavior evolves. Like before, it wasn't obviously as video based as it is now, and the
Right.
attention spans shift, and it's kind of just always changing, and you kind of have to always keep up with it. So it keeps you on your toes. But I think as much as it's been around for now, like over 10 years now at least, it's still the platform, or still, I guess, the industry that's not as well known about. There's still a lot of education that needs to be around it. There's a lot of restrictions, obviously, when it comes to like copyright and legal to be able to do fun things on social. And for people to really understand the value, I think has always been a constant conversation that I'm having till now, even with data, of like showing the value to folks on why we're doing what we're doing, to prove the worth of what we're doing, and just to prove that our strategy is working or isn't working. Like it's always a constant battle.
You're actually a great person to ask this question to, or kind of chat about, because you were at Univision, which is traditional media, but you were on the social media side. And there are a number of things that make me crazy looking at traditional versus social, and just differing expectations in all areas, whether it's disclosure or metrics. But speaking specifically about metrics, it's always so interesting to me that even when I started working in this 10, 15 years ago, there were more metrics than you would actually get from traditional. Like you could actually see how many people saw something, which on TV, it's a little bit vague, and print probably even vaguer, right?
Yeah.
But like with social media, you have this actual data, and there's still such skepticism and such like a traditional mindset of like, this is the way we've always done things, and this is what works for us. And I'm like venting now. And like this willingness to kind of ignore the fact that the numbers are kind of fake in a way, where with social media, they're real actual numbers, and you're seeing so much true data. It must have been really interesting to you to be at a traditional media entity doing social media. And did you see that discrepancy between traditional and social? And if so, how did you deal with it? And am I alone in having this frustration?
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I feel like they're two different beasts. And also, like, obviously they're like so supportive and helping like with distribution. You kind of have to treat the channels so differently. Like even with just within our own social media strategy, like realm, like creating content for YouTube is going to be so much different than creating content for Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, vice versa. So I think kind of just doing a lot more education with the internal teams, especially with the production team that is so used to like real time go, which is kind of how most channels run. But like for a channel like YouTube, it's not like that. So kind of just doing a lot more like education internally on which metrics to be looking at the most. And like you were saying, like the big broader numbers are what they focus on here. But as much as impressions are great, it's like how many of those are actual viewers versus times that they viewed it versus are they engaging with it? Like that's great that they viewed it, but are they continuing to scroll, or are they stopping and actually engaging with the content? Are they sharing it? Like kind of reprioritizing which metrics are the most important per channel, and then just being able to educate that amongst like the folks that are in the production teams, the senior stakeholders, like all those folks that are making the decisions on that. And basically just doing a lot of experimentation too. Like what's great about those channels though is that there was so much content to work with. I think I had too much content at some point, which was just so much. But then understanding like the audiences that are watching the TV shows are not the same audiences that are part of our social media channels.
Right. A younger demographic might prefer just to engage with Univision on social media and not even care that the TV.
Exactly. So that was another point too, where just because we have a great TV show and we can go in instantly and clip as many segments as we want and push them out on our channels, it doesn't mean that that same audience is watching the TV show and also wants to watch the same thing on our channel. So being very strategic on which ones are going to be most beneficial for our content, because sometimes like having too much content is also going to hurt you as well, because it's not really great. It's more quality versus quantity. So I think that was also like a difference there that I experienced than any other job.
That's something we struggle with brands a lot. Like we'll have brands come to us and they want to do both Instagram and TikTok, which is great, but they want to find economies of scale and use the same influencers for both, and are often very surprised. You can look at the same exact creator and look at their demographics on Instagram versus TikTok, and it could be totally different from a gender perspective, from an age perspective, how engaged that following is. And like, I just think it's kind of a really hard mindset to wrap your brain around, that each platform is its own completely separate beast, and you can't just kind of bundle them up together.
Yeah. I mean, it would be so easy if we could, but that's definitely not how human behavior is. That's not how, like, that's not the reality of the game. And so, yeah, no, I definitely agree.
And so it's really interesting to me that you came from Univision, where it's a specific, I mean, obviously there's a range, as we were talking about, in ages and genders, but it was a specific demographic in terms of Latino or Latinx.
Mhm.
And then going to Lyft, where it's kind of like everyone.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, my daughter, who's almost 21, uses Lyft. My aunt, who's in her late 70s, uses Lyft. I mean, and that's just one example. But how do you wrap your brain around that? I mean, so you have all the platforms, but then there's also just trying to reach all those different people where they are.
Yeah, no, definitely. They're definitely two different experiences. Also, because the Univision, I grew up with it, so it's been a part of my like identity since I was a child. So that kind of felt more at home. Versus Lyft, you're talking to so many different audiences because, like you said, it's everyone, but also it's drivers and riders, which are two different experiences. Those who are driving to obviously make a living or at least part-time, and those who are riding to get to the airport or, you know, to travel around. And so I think like the experience there's so many different demographics. But I think the biggest learning, and I take with me in every experience ever since Univision, is that if you want to talk to specific audiences, you need to have that representation and those cultural insights lead the way. Like talking to even to Latinx, like we're not also one big blanket. Like when we created content about traditions or habits within the Mexican, like US Mexican culture, those who are Cuban or those who are from Puerto Rico, they're not going to relate because they're so different, even though they're all under the Latinx bucket. Like we're not all the same. There's so many nuances and differences within that one culture that I think that kind of I take away to everything that I do, like really being culture and insights led on who we're talking to, and then having that audience be within our content and learn from them and have that representation be there. Like within everything we do when it comes to our content, although we're talking to different audiences, like we make sure we have culture lead the way. There's diversity and inclusion. Like we're talking to those folks because Lyft is very inclusive. We also want to talk to those like audiences that maybe most brands don't want to talk to or don't talk to enough.
Yeah.
And so we want to make sure we have that representation within our employees, within the folks that we talk to, with the content creators we work with. Like we're very much that brand, like forward thinking. So I think that's kind of the brands that I always want to work for and work with.
Yeah.
And so ever since Univision, that kind of opened up my eyes to I want to work with companies that really have those values that I align with.
And then for the Lyft TikTok, you talked about that you're marketing Lyft to both riders and drivers. I'm so interested in the process of using social media to recruit, especially in this gig economy where there's a lot of need out there. There's a lot of competition for gig workers, especially during COVID. You know, there were questions about safety and like there's just so much there. So can you talk a little bit about how you've used the platforms, like not just to market Lyft, but to actually recruit?
Absolutely. I think when I got hired in the pandemic, that's kind of been the biggest effort of like, obviously no one's really out and, you know, using rideshare, but how can we get back from this? You know, there's definitely like a bright hope that we can get back to a new normal at the time. So we were trying to figure out ways to do that. And I think at the core and the center, we always want to make sure our drivers feel valued. That's what we repeat constantly. Like we want to make sure they're seen and heard. They're like not only riders, but also drivers are obviously the bread and butter of our service. So we want to make sure they're recognized and valued. So during the pandemic, what we did too was just a lot of different campaigns to make sure that they were heard and to make a big splash across the driver community. And I think one big effort we did was create an access, like a transportation access. Like we never want transportation to be a barrier for folks. Like if folks need to go to a job interview or they need to feel like they can get from place to place to continue their normal lives, like we want to make sure Lyft is an easy way for them to get to and from. So having transportation access for folks to go to job interviews, things like that, creating different campaigns across TikTok, identifying drivers who are actively recording their day of the life as a Lyft driver and making sure they're acknowledged, you know, sliding into their DMs saying, hey, let's work together. Let's, you know, elevate the content you're doing on our platforms, and working with drivers who are really, really dedicated to really creating a great experience in their Lyfts. That I think that's kind of just been a great recruitment tool. I think TikTok has been a great tool in terms of not only just posting content and growing an audience, but building community within the comment section. We've seen so many success, even PR moments of just us commenting on TikToks, building the brand, communicating with other drivers, creating fun banter. Like that's created great relationships for us within just the comment section. So kind of just being active within the community has been a really great recruitment tool for us.
I love the way that social media can kind of show that day in the life and just kind of get across the excitement of a job or just what it feels like. I remember we were learning about Twitch to use for programs, and we were watching, this sounds dorky, we were all watching Twitch together, but we were watching a messenger, like a bike messenger in New York, and he has a live Twitch stream going all day, just showing what it's like to be a bike messenger and like picking up food. And on the face of it, it sounds like the most boring thing ever, but it was so exciting. And you had like people watching, and it was like really active and lots of movement. And I don't know that you could ever find words or, photos to kind of convey the excitement of what it's like to be a bike messenger in New York. But this live streaming platform brought it to life and added that excitement.
Yeah, absolutely. Folks are using the live feature in different ways that like you didn't even like know could be used. And it's just so fun. Like, just I think like observing other people is also just like funny content as well.
Yeah. So getting back to metrics, I'd love to talk to you about like what you think are the most valuable ones. Which ones do you learn the most from? Like when you pull up a report, where does your eye go first and why?
For me, it's a tie between reach and overall engagements. And for me, it's like more public engagements, like are people liking, commenting, and sharing, like those that can be really visible on the platform or on the post. I mean, because I kind of think of it as like if you're walking by a really awesome like bar or restaurant, and you're thinking about going in. If you see a line, or if you see a lot of reviews, or if you see a lot of conversation or buzz around it, you're like, oh, let me see what this is about. So that's how I kind of think about posts. Like if there's a lot of public facing engagements, like clicks for me, you wouldn't really know if you pass by an article if it's really popular or not, but you see a lot of comments or a lot of likes or a lot of shares. So kind of seeing the amount of total interactions on a post versus how much reach it's had. So if people are sharing it, it's going to get a high reach. So you want to be able to do the calculations and figure out what's your benchmark engagement rate on average for your posts, and then do that calculation for a post and then see if it's above or below it. And then that's how you can determine if it's a really good post or if it's a bad post or like up right at the cusp. So kind of just seeing that balance, because it's great if there's like a lot of impressions or a lot of reach, but if it has really below interactions, no one really cares for the content. So kind of finding that good balance, which we call engagement rate, is our number one metric for success. But then overall, like looking at the context of it too, like you also want to see if it's a video. Like for me, video, it's a views, but more so video like retention, like view retention, like looking at the charts. Like data has become so much more visual, especially on TikTok's analytics dashboard.
Yeah.
There's all these charts that like show you if it's like a below spike, above spike, kind of just shows overall like where are people dropping off and how long are they watching, and are they watching until the end? And that's one of the factors of how TikTok also shows content within your For You page, is are people really sticking around long enough? And YouTube obviously has kind of been the like traditional one that's kind of been using that data from the beginning. But I think now more and more video obviously is not going away anytime soon. So that data is just going to continue to grow. So how can you really be strategic in your video content to get folks to watch all the way through, or at least have a higher retention rate than the industry average? So that's kind of like the content, like the data points that I look at from there. And then at the end of the day, like, is it significant for your brand too? Like, I also want to look at the context. Like, is this representative of what we want to be doing on social? Like, let's say like memes or a certain format online is really trending, but isn't fit for your brand, and you're starting to act like a brand that's not true to your values. And it doesn't really feel great to create that content. You're just doing it to be on trend. Like, what really like shows your values, shows the message you're trying to get across, what your brand is about, but then also aligns with great metrics is also a great recipe for success.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that, because I think I agree with you that engagement is kind of queen and like it's what you have to look at. But it's so interesting to look at different types of businesses and how you take those social media metrics and tie them back to the actual business. So like it can be performing really well, but is it moving the needle from a like number of rides perspective or downloads of the app? Or do you ever look at that, or are you purely focused on just the performance of social and let another team bring in the business?
Absolutely. I have experience both in organic and paid. Right now, my role is purely organic. So when I look at the data, I look for content performance and more for brand awareness and brand love. So for measurement of our success and what we report to our senior stakeholders is like brand mentions, brand sentiment, overall, is it positive, negative, what people are saying across social media, and then also just share a voice, like how much of the content being talked about in rideshare is Lyft versus our competitors. So kind of looking at those more brand awareness bucket, but on the paid media side, which we work really closely with our paid social team, when they boost our content or create paid campaigns around our content that we're creating, they're looking at conversions. So from that content, are people actually converting to new riders, new drivers? Are they downloading the app? Are they taking rides? Like, is our content driving actual conversions? So those two together show overall like brand marketing success. So we work hand in hand. So I've worked on both sides, but my role is mainly just brand awareness.
I kind of love the way that the performance of organic can help inform paid.
Yeah.
We have this conversation often that we don't ever boost anything without first seeing how it's kind of trending on its own, because it doesn't make sense to put money behind something that just is not appealing, or for whatever reason it's not hitting. And looking at those numbers and how the organic stuff is doing and how it's reaching people can really inform the paid, which then will hopefully drive more business.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why we work like so closely with that team, because as soon as we post content, we're obviously monitoring it to see how it's averaging out with our average benchmark of engagement rate. And if it's starting to tick upwards, we'll alert the team to immediately put money behind it. Also, it'll drive the cost down too, because it's good content that people are already organically engaging with. So it'll be cheaper at the end, but also drive much more success for us.
Yeah. This is kind of out of the blue, but you mentioned YouTube before. What are your thoughts on YouTube Shorts?
Oh man, there's so much effort and push around it. I'm seeing it everywhere. I think, you know what? I think at the end of the day, all of us, all the platforms are just kind of like trying to like fight for attention. And so I think it's not a bad way of what they're trying to do. I don't know how much it's going to really stick around, but I feel like we can just like only watch and see. I mean, I think it's really great at the end of the day. YouTube's always had a great reputation, especially with creators, on giving them like a more like ad share than I feel like the other platforms have.
Totally.
So I think they have that loyalty of YouTubers who have been on the platform for so many years now, like Mr. Beast and on. So many different content creators have been on the platform. So I think it'll always kind of be the powerhouse it is. Don't know how well Shorts will do, just because like the user behavior of it is so different than what I'm used to doing on YouTube.
Right.
I'm not used to that type of content. So I feel like there has to be that adjustment period. No, but I feel like who knows where it'll go now.
The thing I like, I mean, I'm obviously coming from an influencer marketing perspective, but what appeals to me about Shorts, we've always had this issue with YouTube that clients want a full dedicated video and creators only want to give like a segment of a video for paid. And sometimes you're talking about 20 minutes, 15, the size varies. With Shorts, you can suddenly offer up that dedicated video without having to ask a creator to talk about a brand for 30 minutes straight, which can be a lot. So for me, selfishly, I'm like, yes, another avenue. But yeah, we'll see. I think it is a totally different way of interacting with that platform in general. So
yeah, who knows? But I mean, the organic reach is great right now, just like TikTok from like the beginning too. If creators are starting to see that their content is actually going to get rewarded with views and interactions, which I feel like Instagram was at the beginning, like more people are going to want to gravitate towards those channels.
Yeah. So. Yeah. Okay, so now we have this fun question that we ask everyone who's a guest to the podcast, just because obviously growing up in the 70s and 80s, like TV commercials were everything, and were kind of like my original influence. So what TV commercial from your childhood has stuck with you to this day?
Oh my God, I had an answer and I tried to rethink what my answer was for this. Oh my God, it was the Chocula commercial.
Okay, Count Chocula.
Was it Kix? I'm like, why am I thinking Kix? If I have to think back of the different commercials I had growing up, I want to say, this is going to be silly, but cereal commercials. Just because I've always had a sweet tooth, and I've tried all different types of cereals growing up. And as much as like, obviously they're not great for you, and my family was never really big on like a lot of sugary cereals, I think I always found a way to convince them to get me at least the latest box. And I think the Chocula one with the Dracula was always the one that kind of just stood out, because the creatures were just so funny and memorable. And I feel like in terms of Halloween coming up, I feel like that's a funny one.
Yeah, well, and it made that delicious chocolate milk that you had like an extra bonus treat when you were done with your cereal.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, those always kind of just stuck in my head.
Awesome. Well, that's great. Well, thank you so much. It was so much fun getting to know you and chatting, and loved hearing about everything you've done. And I'm excited for what's coming down the road.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It was great talking to you.
Of course. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Please check back next Monday for a new episode featuring marketing conversations through the lens of influence. I am your host, Danielle Wiley, and this is The Art of Sway.
You may know you're listening to this show along the Marketing Podcast Network, but did you know there are other great shows on MPN to help your business? Jamie Lieberman hosts a great podcast called the Unbusiness Podcast. Jamie, tell us what these fine folks will get when they listen.
The Unbusiness Podcast provides interviews with real-life entrepreneurs to talk about their struggles, their strategies, and how they have had success and what they've done in the face of failure. It is a real-life look at what it means to own your own business and gives you real takeaways on how you can make yours better.
Awesome. Where can people subscribe?
Go to #legal.com/podcasts. Find the show at marketingpodcasts.net or search for the Unbusiness Podcast wherever you get your podcasts.
You heard her. Go subscribe. This podcast is heard along the Marketing Podcast Network. For more great marketing podcasts, visit marketingpodcasts.net.